Christmas, that magical time of year when kids stay up late, full of excitement, hoping to catch a glimpse of a flying reindeer. A time for families to come together, max their credit cards on total shite, and eat their weight in roasted meats and Brussels sprouts. There are some simpler folk, however, who attach another meaning to the season. They too share a tale of white-bearded men from up north, of physics-defying animals, of gifts and of miracles, and of good and evil. All packaged as
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
the most stupid fucking story ever told. Our tale begins with two conflicting, long and convoluted genealogies for a man named Joseph, son of Jacob, or was that son of Eli? Why? Well, it's a thinly veiled attempt by the writers to hide a massive plot hole from episode 1. You see, messianic prophecy foretold that the Messiah would be born of the line of David. So imagine your horror when you realise you'd wrote an entire second series and missed this key detail. Well, you do what any self-respecting woo peddler would do in this situation. You draw up a lineage for the unrelated stepdad, despite the fact that his DNA won't be shared by your hero, and trust that stupid people won't notice. Like most of the favourite stories we tell our kids, our tale begins high in the mountains of Syria when a 14-year-old girl, Mary, gets raped by a ghost because of a translation error. Worried that she might be pregnant out of wedlock, the ghost Gabriel assures her that he'll square it all with her husband-to-be. As it turns out, Mary was up the duff, so she moves off to Jordan to stay with Zachariah and her cousin Elizabeth. Elizabeth explains to Mary that Zechariah had been shooting blanks for years, but she too miraculously became pregnant after a visit from Gabriel. Anyway, so Mary stayed with Zechariah and Elizabeth for 3 months until she bore a son. And so it was that Zechariah, whose father's name was Abijah, whose father's name was Hakos, whose father's name was Mijamin, whose father's name was Malchiah, named his son John. Anyway, so John, son of Zechariah, had a very special purpose. You see, in 30 years' time, whilst baptising people in the crocodile-infested waters of the Jordan, he'd forget that he even had a cousin, so that he could declare that, "I've never seen this guy before, but he's totally the Son of God." After some time, Joseph headed off to the mountains for Bethlehem with his wife-to-be, their unborn ghost baby, and a time-travelling donkey. You see, it was terribly important that they all made it to Bethlehem long before the death of King Herod some 4 years earlier, and before the census of Quirinius, which would happen a full 10 years after that. Joseph, who was totally from the line of David, had to go to Bethlehem, because that's where David was from, and therefore that's where Joseph and all his people came from, because they were totally from the line of David, you see. And it was written that everyone had to go to their place of birth for the census. Therefore, Joseph had to go to Bethlehem, because, you know, he was totally from the line of David. And so it was, and thus it came to pass, that Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem simultaneously on both the 24th of December, 5 or 6 BC, as well as around 6 AD. And, as you can imagine, being that Bethlehem was totally Joseph's hometown, and not just written in retrospectively by religious zealots as a plot device, there was no end of friends and family he could stay with. Unfortunately though, and presumably due to time travel sickness, Joseph forgot this and resorted to try to stay at the inn, but they were full for Christmas, so he ended up staying outside with the cattle. And there it was that Mary gave birth, and just as had been foretold when the Lord spoke to the prophet and said, "Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel." And so, with the clear instructions from the ghost Gabriel and all the prophecies that went before, Mary and Joseph looked down upon the face of their glowing ghost baby and named him Jesus. Anyway, in a perfectly normal, not weird at all kind of way, 3 nearby shepherds were living outside watching their flocks by night, as is the custom at 2,500 feet above sea level in the middle of winter. There, in a region known for its opium production, they had a completely unverified encounter with an angel, which resulted in the skies tearing open to expose heaven. The angelic figure told the shepherds all about Mary and Joseph and the special ghost baby, and that they were nearby and they should totally go have a look. So, having fulfilled their only purpose of giving generations of ugly, talentless kids something to dress up as in a nativity, they f***ed off. At the exact same moment, and somehow about a decade earlier at the same time, 3 Persian priests, often mislabelled as wise men despite turning up in the wrong town, made inquiries about the ghost baby that they'd travelled to see under an undocumented wandering star. King Herod, who wasn't dead in this timeline, caught wind of this and sought an audience with the priests. He said it was so he could go and worship the baby privately, but really it was so the long dead horse religious motif of a jealous king could be wheeled out for one last flogging. You see, prophecy foretold the baby would supplant the king. Didn't happen. Thus he put out an order to have all male children killed. And so, like Moses before him, Sargon of Akkad before that, or Danos, or Horus, or countless other persons of significance from legend, we find our heroes fleeing from persecution while babies are slaughtered in their wake. Except in our alternative timeline, where Mary and Joseph simply cut the tip of the baby's dick off and take him to Jerusalem, where they present him to the temple where the long dead Herod can't bother them. In fact, the only slaughter that takes place on this timeline is of the 2 pigeons and the 2 doves that Mary and Joseph take along with them to be slaughtered, because religion is fucking stupid like that. A quick donkey ride back in time and we find Mary, Joseph and an unscathed Jesus hiding out in Egypt trying to tick off another couple of prophecies. Finally, when the evil King Herod died and had been dead for 10 years simultaneously, the young family journeyed one last time back to Nazareth in order to reinstate the timelines. There, both Mary and Joseph could relax in the full knowledge that their parts in bringing about this special baby into the world was finally over. A special baby that would go on to fulfill in his lifetime such biblical prophecies as becoming the King of Israel, bringing about world peace, bringing the whole world under one religion, all in the name of the greatest story ever told. Merry Christmas, everyone!